So,
I mean, we were talking about some of the top Peter David comics or runs that he's had over the years. Now, of course, everybody's going to have their own favorites and may or may not agree with the list that CBR put up. But for me, for example, I know it's always been more the Spider-Man 2099, which was, I thought, very good and just had, like I just said previously, there was a recent run that they had last year that Marvel put out, which I liked. Um, and of course, you see Spider-Man 2099 in the Spider-Verse movie. So, he's introduced a brand new character that has made definitely a hit in at least is prominent in Marvel now. Um, of course, you also have the iconic work, which PD and Cal could talk more about it, which is the Incredible Hulk.
mhm.
PD Cal.
So we go into that. All right. So obviously, let's go to say, Peter David initially worked in sales in Marvel, and he slowly inched over and started working on Spider-Man with the original. His name was Jim Osley, known as Christopher Priest, as editor, and he started doing interesting Spider-Man stories, and he did the Sin Eater story. But then soon after, he got the Hulk, which was gray at that point. Al Milgrom had turned him gray, and he and Peter David kind of like pretty early on. I think it's Hulk 331 was his first issue. I think by the sixth, I think I bought the first issue, Todd McFarlane, which is the issue before that, and then they were highlighting X Factor is going to capture the Hulk, and I was a big X Factor guy at that point. I think I was coming into it, and then it was the ads were the was a gag, and that would kind of bring me to Peter David's work, where he was saying they had the Hulk captured, and he said they're gonna kill me, and the X Factor is like, why would you say that? He said, well, that's what I would do if I captured me. And I cracked up. And then the art was interesting. I was kind of getting into Todd McFarlane's art at that point. I didn't like his first issue, but I said, hey, this inking for these ads are pretty good. Let me check it out. And then I stayed with it. And I think by the was it 340, like Wolverine was in the book and Todd was inking himself. So it was like he was Peter David and Todd were an explosion at the start of the Todd thing, and then I think Jeff was it Purvis did the Hulk, and that's the whole classic. What's the name? The Joe Fixit. Cal, you want to chime in about Joe Fixit before I
Love
spend
Joe
2 hours?
Fixit. Didn't realize it was Joe Fixit that he did.
No, he did.
Cal.
Let's see. I don't know. No, that's him and McFarlane would be the redesign on the leader. But yeah, Joe
Yeah.
Fixit's Peter David. We had the return of the Gray Hulk. The finale of the finale of that storyline, at least with the Todd McFarlane run, is that everybody believes the Hulk is dead. But unbeknownst to the populace, he went and got a job as an enforcer in Las Vegas by the name of Joe Fixit. And then we had about was it about a year and change? I think it was about a year and change worth of stories where the Hulk is this fixer, rather not sorry, not a fixer, but an enforcer in Las Vegas. Even there was a crossover with Wolverine, that popular Twins homage cover that John Buscema does with Fix It and
Oh
Wolverine on
yeah,
the cover.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
So among
that's the payback. The Chris Claremont one is the payback issue
Mhm.
for the Hulk. After Wolverine killing him, then the Hulk was about to beat the Wolverine into the ground, and then Chris Claremont had to get his payback, where he says, "Hey, I could kill you when you're human," and then the Hulk punches him and said, "Don't come to my town no more." Sorry for chiming in here.
Yeah, so I don't know how outside of Hulk readers or Hulk fans, I don't know how popular Joe Fixit is, but amongst Hulk readers, that was I mean the issue itself sells pretty well, and the stories were received pretty well. And Peter David was on board, I think, more than once, saying that he didn't really want to tell uh, the Rage Hulk. I'm sorry, uh, the Savage Hulk type stories. You
Hmm.
could tell from the writing that he wasn't really looking to do that. So the whatever he could do to keep as far away from that as possible, it seems he did. But he did it for he did it to 10 years and with a wide range. a wide range of popularity when it came to it. But yeah, Joe Fixit was a nice little that was a nice little period in the Hulk's history. What I also thought he did well with it is that didn't become it didn't go too long. It went just as long as it should have been, and then they moved on. So he had the right timing for that. It came on. It was a bit of a novel idea, and then it was off to the pasture where it belonged. But we would see Joe Fixit actually appear again in the same Hulk run, except this time he was green. And for some reason, nobody knew it was nobody. Everybody, hey, it's Joe Fixit. It's like, no, it's the Hulk.
Yeah.
But they had a 2023 run of Joe Fixit, which I also got, where you have Spider Man is in there, the Rhino, which is pretty funny. He's in Vegas. So
All right, no, I'm kidding. But I think was it? I think the Hulk because doing that and well, Hulk was because it was it. I think John Romita, since he kind of pushed to get Todd off of the Hulk, saying this doesn't kind of look right for the Hulk, and then Todd had muscled his way in the Spider-Man office, and he was like, "Oh man, Romita was like, I can't kick Todd off of Spider-Man because I kicked him off the Hulk, and Spider-Man is now blowing up. Maybe the Hulk would have blown up with Todd on it too. I shouldn't have got rid of him. So even though I think it doesn't look right, I'm gonna let Todd do what he was. But he had two other explosions. We had was it Dale Keown came on there, which was kind of the right period. They had a little bit of the Red Hulk. I think he did it the Red Hulk for maybe a couple issues before he turned Professor Hulk or the later Professor Hulk. So, but you had all this great Dale Keown art. Then you had the initial Gary Frank stuff. Now Gary Frank is great, does great figures. I was funny that he never got all the faces are the same. People were like, "Nah, this is just cool. We just like it." But he was like kind of Dale Keown light. He wasn't as big action pack, but he did great figures, did great babes. That's always a good sign for an artist. So he had this great period of artists going forward, and he survived. His Hulk survived Heroes Reborn because the Image guys wanted the Hulk, and Marvel was able to say, "Well, the Hulk is selling. Like, why are we going to, let the Hulk go to that?" So they split the Hulk. The Hulk gets split, and there's a Hulk, and you had Mike Deodato did some issues. You had William Sharp, and then I think can't remember who ended his run, but you had all this great period of art and writing and a lot of gags because that was the key thing. I would buy it just to find the gag. I think there's one with Dale Keown where the Professor Hulk has glasses on, and Rick Jones he says, "Bruce, are you here?" He's like, "What?" What? He said, "Oh, the glasses do work. I didn't recognize you at all." So he always had like some sort of gags in there. And he had, big fights, everything that you want in a comic book. So. And he kind of mixed up he also looked at the first six issue as the kind of thing to do. So he kind of said this would always be changing, and that ultimately would lead him to leave where he wanted to do. Well, he did get to do killing Betty, and then, but not to do how he was planning on doing it. So. But yeah, definitely for the 8 years. I mean, his run was so strong, it's hard for people to recognize that the Hulk was a success before Peter David, because they kind of look at it and say, well, that Hulk, the Savage Hulk, the Hulk Smash Hulk was generic, and
That's
this
like
was like, what?
for me, that's always such an oddball comment. It's like people come and saying, "Oh, it wasn't until like the Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams run that Batman, people knew who Batman was." It's like obviously they did. He was around for over 30 years before. Same thing with the Hulk. The Hulk is not a character, say like the Punisher, where the Punisher takes about 10 years to find his footing,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can say, okay, he's a bona fide hit, or even like Wolverine at the end of the day, where this isn't somebody who jumped out of the gate and everybody knows it. No, the Hulk was this is one of the founding members of the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
He's got his own series. Own series does get canceled. Then he comes over. He's like almost like a supporting character. He gets back into it with Tales to Astonish. gets his own series, pretty much taking over the series uh, from Giant Man. Him and Submariner will split the series, and they both go off get their own series, and that's it. The Hulk has been published. The Hulk has been published ever since. Had a TV series. Was is a popular character, marketed well, a lot of licensing on him. Kids like him, and then for people to come here just because you liked it or just because it resonated with you doesn't mean that the character wasn't popular. It means you just discovered the character now. That's all that it really means. Doesn't have anything to do with anything else.
Yeah. So I mean, that was one of definitely. I know there's also George Perez after having a struggle at DC and he wasn't able to complete. Wasn't able. They did the Future Imperfect. So we got 2 issues fully drawn by George Perez, but of course he was also running into some deadline struggles. So he decided he wasn't going to give up the inking to someone else. So he said he spent 3 days doing the last issue in his house, and then he went to. I think he spent a couple nights on it, and then I think he went to sleep for 3 days, and his wife didn't know if he was going to wake up. But the Future Imperfect with the Maestro, and the Maestro might be coming in. They talked about to the Marvel Universe. They said that character might be by Edward Norton. Of course, this is Marvel. Why wouldn't they? So but that's a popular character. Definitely became kind of a punching bag. But it was only supposed to be a 1 issue type of thing, like a cool kind of 1 issue thing, and then coming back kind of turned it into. And if you they also did a couple of the End series where it was, I think, the Hulk the End with Dale Keown and Peter David. So those are things to check out if you want to check it out. But going on to the next thing.
What about some of the other comics here, Peter?
Well, that's the thing. The other thing that I liked was initially his start on X Factor. So I was very sad that he brought in. This was the first time because his X Factor was, I think, Eric Larson had pitched an X Factor which had Havoc and a couple of characters he created. Havoc, Polaris, and a couple of characters he created. And then I guess Peter David pitched, or no, I think Bob Harris wanted Peter David to pitch, and he pitched having Alex, Polaris, the strong guy who was like Leah Cheney's bodyguard, who's actually had powers, but he was just like a bodyguard, and Jamie Madras, the multiple man, and then they also slipped in Quicksilver. Now that was the draw for me because I've always been a Quicksilver fan. So the fact that he wasn't a villain anymore, and he was a part of X Factor, and he was he was written the right way. He was also, Peter David tried to push him back with Crystal, but obviously the Avengers titles were taking precedent. So, of course, Crystal had to go back and pawn over the now new, coolly reinvented Black Knight, who somehow got updated to Martin Riggs from Lethal Weapon for some strange reason. But X Factor was one of my favorite books. It was fun. It was the original art was what was it, Larry Stroman, which we met at Comic Cons. It was a really fun book. What else can I say about it? Regretfully, by the time when Quesada took over, there's a great issue, probably the best comic issue of a therapy session in comic books. Now, it doesn't sound like it's something that would be interesting, but the way Peter David does it in Quesada's art, it's like, it's like a whole therapy session with all the characters. And that was Quesada's intro to the book. He had left, he'd gotten almost looked past by DC, even though he designed the new Batman costume. And the next thing you know, they lost Quesada to the X books, and he was doing X Factor. And then by the time they did the Magneto return, Peter David was gone. I guess because there was too many, what's those things? Crossovers. So he was gone. But it was like, that was kind of my book at that point too. So it would be the Hulk and then X Factor. That was one of my favorites. And he, Guido was originally Guido turned into Strong Guy. And they say, that's not a real cool code name. So why not? So it was a lot of cool stuff. Obviously, Cal, did you check out X Factor at all?
The crossover issues with the Hulk. That's it.
Okay. And then I guess the next thing we'd have to say is the death of Jean DeWolf. That was the Sin Eater storyline, which, I mean, it played Spider-Man as a street level character. He was fighting this guy. This guy somehow got the better of Spider-Man, even though he's human. People won't even let the who's that guy? The
Galactus?
Kingpin, huh?
You said Galactus?
No, it's like they won't even let the Kingpin get a punch in on
Yeah, that's why I was saying Galactus.
Spider-Man.
That's why I was saying Galactus. You won't even let Galactus get a punch in on Spider-Man in his own book.
Yeah, but they'll let the Sin Eater was doing things, but it was it was right around the right time. It was before all, I think, before the it was he was doing the death of, but it would go along with the stuff you'd see later, like in the Dark Knight or even what's that thing, Watchmen. That sort of thing. So, what else we got here? Oh, Spider-Man 2099. Now, I only bought the first three issues. I enjoyed the first three issues of Spider-Man 2099. I enjoyed the art, and for some reason, I said I can't. I'm not doing it anymore. So, but from what I read, I liked it.
Mars?
Yeah, I already said, I liked it a lot. It was one of my favorite comics when it came out. I read it. I bought it, I guess, in every single iteration that it's had so far. I definitely like the character, and it's a different take on Spider-Man, of course. I know some people don't like that, but I'm much more flexible than others, and I thought it was interesting, especially taking from the 2099 universe. I mean, I like some of the other 2099 titles that they had out too at the same time. But Spider-Man overall was probably the best one of them all. And you see him just continued throughout. They just had a run for him recently, and he just shows up in the Spider Verse as a main character in the Spider Verse movie. So yeah, I think it was pretty good.
Um,
I don't know about some of the other like his run on Supergirl. I never read the Supergirl run.
I did read that. That was actually pretty solid. That went through like a couple of changes because initially the Supergirl is originally Supergirl isn't really a human being. She's like a protoplasmic form from a pocket universe. She's the only holdover from this pocket universe that was created so they could kill off Superboy and still have an origin for the Legion of Superheroes after 1986. So she still hangs on and goes through a couple of changes. By the time she gets to Peter David's book, I guess he didn't really want to do the protoplasm anymore, and she was bonded with like an Earth Angel or something of that nature. But it was a successful run. It was over, I think it was about 81 issues. You know, definitely entertaining from start to definitely entertaining from start to finish. He even found a way to work Kara Zor-El, the original Kara Zor-El, into the actual story. So ended on a pretty strong note there.
I don't think I thought they had, what was it? I think this was the title. Gary Frank was doing it, and it was a little bit of controversy. I don't know, maybe Gary Frank. Well, Gary Frank was saying the scripts were late, and then he was like, "What? You could just call me." It was like a little bit of controversy, but I know he started it. The covers look really nice. I never checked it out. Young
By the
Justice,
time
huh?
Yeah, by the time you get to the end of the series, Ed Benes is doing it, and I think I think Ed Benes got criticism for his Supergirl being too sexy, so he might have gone from one extreme to the other. Too lame, too sexy.
Well, I think what I've seen, I know he did Artemis, so I was okay with his type of art. I don't know. I mean, it's weird because people, I mean, anytime you mention, the Catwoman run, it's like comic comic fans in DC made the biggest crime of having a book that sold because you have a super hot Catwoman with Jim Ballard, and it's just like, but it's, it's they had some stories in there, but no, just eye candy, but it sold well, that's it. But anyway,
Did,
um,
uh, did, did Young Justice influence the Young Justice TV show?
yeah, but they're
So
all
even though
characters, all existing characters. So the hard thing is, how do you profit off of you know, all characters that, you know, Young Justice is derivative of the Justice League.
Yeah, the Young Justice cartoon, the Young Justice cartoon series and the Young Justice series, two different things. You know, they definitely went for a more mature, if you will, take
Okay,
on those characters. Where in the comic they were younger, it was a bit more sprite like, if you will, but definitely a more mature thing when they got over to the when they got over to animation.
yeah. I think in this one, I think they have well, when I heard about it, they had who's that guy, Red Tornado in the team, but then they kind of wrote something to some, they did some writing over him. I was just like, no, not the Red Tornado's the coolest. So and we got to talk about. I couldn't get with the Aquaman. I was like, I'm gonna check this out. The art looks okay, and then the hook happened, and and the Namorification of the of
Of Aquaman.
Aquaman getting rid of the marriage. I
Yep.
mean, obviously, it's interesting to have him running around with Dolphin. You know, that's always a fan favorite, even though it's not a character that can sell a book. But you know, had him running around with Dolphin, and it just kind of feels like. But I mean, at the same time, there was a lot of buzz around this title, so we had a lengthy run. Obviously, DC at some point is like, all right, we got to put some stuff back, and they did. They gave, you know, well, they had Eric Larson take over. And, Eric Larson did his it's too tough to follow. Even if I'm saying this sort of thing, you know, I gave a lot of his stuff a try when he went to the mainstream again, and I don't think any of Eric Larson's stuff worked in the mainstream. Like it's really perfect for Savage Dragon. So, but so that showed even the issues of the Aquaman that issue of Aquaman that I read. You know, they kind of blew the Eric Larson issues out of the water. I think Rick Veitch, he did a very short run on Aquaman, and then I think Will Pfeiffer, those ones I was checking out. But Peter David is the one people always talk about. Well, I mean, you should talk about the Jim Aparo one. That's the classic art and stuff like that. But you know, Peter David is one that kind of rose to fame. He's the one that's in the Marvel versus what's the name in the Justice League and Morrison's Justice League. So there's a lot of things to this run, and he also wrote Atlantis Chronicles about the past of DC's Atlantis. So that's also something you can check out.
All right. Is there anything else you guys want to discuss about this? Any other comics that you did not see part of the list that you thought should have been added?
No, no comics, but if you're considering uh, donating to Peter David, assisting him in his time of need, I think that's a very good cause, and I think you could not be more right for doing so. I hope he gets better, and I hope he's able to make through. I hope he's able to make it through this successfully. So, you know, if you can spare the money, I think it's a good cause, and please donate. He's a guy who gave us a lot of countless hours of enjoyment. He's going through a really rough patch. If you can be of any assistance to him, please do.
I will I will say I you know thank you for that, Cal. That's, you know, definitely support and help him out. He's definitely a great creator. The only thing I will mention this Captain Marvel run. I think the design, or was it Carlos Pacheco?
Oh, Janice Marvel?
Yeah, that the redesign of him was really nice, and then Christopher Cross did the
Yeah.
regular series with Peter David, and it's just gorgeous stuff. You know, I know they went through a lot of twists and turns. I think Jim Starlin comes in and draws some, so it's kind of a throwback with Peter David. So and Starlin. Oh, another thing is they did. Starlin created, which is going now, a title called Dreadstar, and when he did, I think he did like 36 issues, and then when he continued it, Peter David wrote that series for a very long, for a decent time. And at some point, Jim Starlin wasn't even, you know, thinking that he would go back to the title. he's more recently has gone back to it, and he's, I think, republishing the Peter David and the original run too. So I would definitely, check out his Captain Marvel. It has Rick Jones in it. And then just honorable mention to Dreadstar, because that's also one of the early creator-owned stuff that was at Epic, and then being creator-owned, he was able to take it out of Epic and go somewhere else with it. So that's the actual thing. And I will say, just will say, Spy Boy, though it wasn't. I think I bought the first issue. I kind of felt that I know he was at odds with Image. I think the highest profile he could have gotten for this character, like a junior James Bond, if he had done it for Image. I know there was a long war of words between him and Image, but to get the highest profile in your biggest sales, the hardest thing to do is try to do the book at Dark Horse, because I mean, I have a ton of trades from Dark Horse. The closest thing that they really got was Hellboy to the theaters, and it was a very slow grind to the success that Mike Mignola's had. But I always felt the ones, but they kind of singularly looked at that. They're like, well, let's do the what's those things? License and Hellboy, and then they're like, oh, we like Goon now, and it's like before they had Concrete, but Concrete, was one of the classic creator-owned stuff, but it didn't do that. So I always felt when he started doing Spy Boy, it just felt like something that should have been an Image, and it probably would have given Image some consistency of a monthly title, and would have given it a bigger, bigger audience too, and a chance to kind of make it to, because this like a junior James Bond is a real simple and easy and fun idea. So it's say a satirical romp. So it's like you're taking his humor. He also did. I have some other stuff, Heartbreakers, that he did for. He worked. He really worked. He was a workhorse. That's a better way to say. I don't want to say worked his behind off. He was a workhorse. So there's so many comic companies, novels, this that, and the other. But this is. I just felt the property would have been something for Image to kind of give it a high profile type of thing, or get on the Jim Lee cliffhanger thing, like the cliffhanger, like stuff with like Danger Girl and what's those things. So I felt it kind of should have maybe got to a more higher profile, because it always felt Dark Horse, as great as they were, so much great properties. It was kind of like not in they got the Mask out and Hellboy, and there's probably a bunch of others, but anyway. But that's the last I have to say. I mean, a great creator and so many stuff, and and it also says it's not that easy. I'm pretty sure he got a decent payday when Marvel had bought when Disney bought Marvel, but then they say after the initial payback for all of the money that they hadn't been paying you for the what's the thing, for the bankruptcy, then the checks were a lot smaller. So,
Okay, well, thanks, Petey. Is there anything else, Cal, before we close this out?
Nope.
Hey, if you like what you heard, give us a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Spinner Rack.
We are out.